I think the sound may be a bit faulty again, so I apologize for that. I'm just going to try and speak as loudly as I can. Um, there was a story that came up on my Facebook feed, which is usually my primary source of news these days because I see Facebook before I turn on the TV. And it said that President Trump will not be marking the end of Ramadan in the White House. So I thought this was a bit intriguing, so I checked it out. Apparently, it's been a tradition for 20 years, so that would be going back to the late Clinton presidency, for the sitting president to mark the end of Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr, which is the breaking of the fast. Um, and this apparently is a 20-year-old tradition. President Trump hasn't done it this year. Um, CNN has been making a big issue out of it. So have a few other networks. They've been making it a big story. Um, the Guardian was, of course, that's a left-wing British newspaper. Um, Here's the thing, though. It's not that President Trump made no sort of formal message. He did actually wish American Muslims very well. So here's my take on it. Whether it's right or wrong to break that tradition is a matter for debate. I personally don't really think it's an issue. I don't think it should be an issue. I don't see why the president of a country where Muslims are a minority, and I'm saying this carefully, I'm not saying that, oh, they're a minority, forget about them. That's not said in a malicious way. It's just a fact. Why he should be obliged to mark that within the executive residence. If Trump had said absolutely nothing, then maybe that would be a little bit undiplomatic and maybe inappropriate if he would make greetings to other groups. I can understand why that would be problematic, but here's the thing I really take issue with. When I looked at the Guardian website, now I wasn't overly surprised because it is the Guardian after all. The Guardian is a very left-wing newspaper. Um, all the comments were like, "Oh, typical of Trump. He's doing this to appease redneck racists, etc., etc., etc." Here's the thing: when was the last time the governments of Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, you name it, any Islamic theocracy, made a public sort of even a statement, never mind publicly marking Easter or Diwali or any other minority event? It simply doesn't happen in those countries. They will contend, oh, but we do respect our minorities. No, you don't. There's absolutely no comparison between the situation of Muslims living in a country like the United States and the situation of minorities in a country like Pakistan. Yes, I am aware that occasionally hate crimes occur, and I condemn that. No one should have to put up with that sort of abuse simply because of what they're wearing. It's wrong. I condemn it unreservedly. But I still argue that there is not a comparison. There is not a moral comparison. So when the left get up in arms about something like this, it is striking because you can be damn sure in most cases they will not be anywhere near as vocal. In fact, they will outright appease what is going on in Islamic theocracies. All I want to see is some consistency. So if you're going to criticize President Trump for that, then criticize the persecution of Christians in Iraq, Iran, you name it. And the truth is, there's not a huge deal of difference between Islamic countries. Some are a bit better than others, but even those that were traditionally sup- supposedly moderate are starting to go down a more theocratic route, such as Indonesia, Bangladesh, Turkey. Now, that's not to say that everyone in these countries are hardline Islamists who hate Christians. Of course not. I am well aware that there are decent Egyptian Muslims, decent Muslims in all these countries who don't hate Christians. But the point is, there is a very sizable portion who does. And there is an endemic persecutions of Christians going on in the Middle East. This is a fact. It's a fact. So I am just fed up with the double standards that the regressive left show. If they were at least consistent, then I'd have a bit more respect for them, but they're not. They're attacking President Trump because He's the poster boy for their attacks. I'm not a huge Trump supporter. There's things I don't agree with that the president has said and done. And I'm not. I am myself consistent. Where the right is wrong, I will call them out. Where there is anti-Muslim bigotry, I will call it out. But this is not that. This is simply a case of it's not a very old tradition. 20 years isn't like a very ancient tradition. Um, and maybe under the current world environment where pan Islamism does represent such a threat, maybe President Trump's reasoning is why should I pander to a religion that frankly is doing nowhere near enough to combat this? There are far too many Islamic scholars still refuse to acknowledge pan Islamism. They still come out with the line it's nothing to do with Islam. So until the religion of Islam shows it's starting to take this problem seriously, why the hell should Western leaders pander to it? That is actually my line of thinking. And my message, respectfully, to American Muslims is if you're not happy with this, well, I just want you to be consistent. If you think that President Trump is kind of, um, turning his nose up at you or whatever, then at least be consistent. At least say, we don't like this, but we also condemn. Not that there's any moral equilibrium, but it's this victimhood narrative I've no time for. Now, maybe if Trump, for example, sends out a message for Diwali or other festivals and it's only Muslims that he's excluding, I would say it's probably a little bit undiplomatic. But the point is, he didn't say nothing. He did wish Muslims well. As far as I'm concerned, that's enough. Why should he have to have some big formal ceremony in the White House for Ramadan? It's stupid. Um, and I'm going to talk about another issue, and this is totally unrelated to what I've just been talking about. Although it comes into, I suppose, left wing thinking on some level. But, I have to say they are totally unrelated stories. I'm only saying in this video because I don't want to make a whole video of it in its own merit. And that is that John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, has come out and said on I believe it was a debate program, that the people at Grenfell Tower were murdered. Murdered. This is incredibly inflammatory and reckless language for a politician in his position. Let's be clear here, this man is number two in the Labour Party. If Labour was to get into government, he would be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which has long been seen as the second most powerful position in government. And he is basically saying that the government murdered 79 people in Grenfell Tower. This is an utter disgrace. And I think John McDonnell should have to apologise over that comment, or at least retract it or something. If he believes that he shouldn't apologise, I've never argued that people should apologise for something they believe in. But that is really telling. Now, there has already been violence over Grenfell. There has already been serious situations where um, anyone perceived to be a conservative politician has been under attack. And I believe there is a case at Grenfell for corporate manslaughter. I believe there is a case there, but that is very different from deliberate murder. And John McDonnell's not a stupid man. He knows that. So what he is doing is deliberately rabble rousing. He is deliberately stoking the flames. And I don't mean that as a pun. I mean that literally. He is stirring things up. He is stirring things up, and I think that's an utter disgrace. Um, and it just again reminds me Labour is simply not fit for government because this is a party that continues to act like a protest party. They arrogantly think they have a right to be in government, even though they lost the election, something they conveniently overlook. Labour did not win that election. The Tories didn't win outright, but they did get more seats than Labour. So when John McDonnell is stirring up a tragedy like this for political gain, which is blatantly what he's doing, I think it's a disgrace. Um, some were criticising Jeremy Corbyn for appearing at Glastonbury. I've mixed opinions on that. I do think that leaders need to connect with young people. Um, some were saying he didn't go to the armed forces event. Well, to be fair, as far as I understand, it's the only the prime minister that can go to that event. So I'm not going to say too much about that. But nevertheless, Labour still looks like a big protest party. They do not look like they're a party aspiring for government. I know they say that everything is costed, and there are interviews will give the impression that they're trying to be a party of government. But when you have the number two person in the party come out and accuse the government of murder over a disaster, I think that is a complete disgrace. And I think John McDonnell, at the very least, should retract those comments. Jeremy Corbyn should distance himself from those comments. They're not going to do that. And I think that's a disgrace.